Okay, hi, my name is Nathan. I'm here to talk to you about the Space Shuttle Challenger. Since the beginning of mankind, man has looked into the stars, and they've only seen space as being this far off, unreachable place. And only in the last century have we been able to make space a tangible frontier. And the shuttle program was a part of that, beginning in 1981 as humanity's first reusable spacecraft. NASA shuttle program, according to NASA's website, has carried people into orbit repeatedly, launched recovered and repaired satellites, conducted cutting-edge research, and built the largest structure in space, the International Space Station. So before the shuttle program, it was just basically individual launches. NASA wanted to make a shuttle that could be reused and something that can land safely again on an airship like an airplane. Unfortunately, the shuttle program faced its first strategy on January 28, 1986, when Space Shuttle Challenger exploded upon liftoff only 73 seconds into flight, and the problem was due to the O-rings and joints. And so my major claim is that NASA management cannot be trusted, and I'm going to show you that through 3 points: that the Challenger disaster could have been prevented, 2, that there has been an abuse of power in management, and that the Space Shuttle Columbia suffered from similar management decisions. So with my first point, the Challenger disaster could have been prevented. So leading up to the day of the disaster, each launch went under different series of testings and reviews to check to see if there was any issues or concerns. And they eventually, engineers found that there was problems with the O-rings and joints. And according to an LA Times article, engineer tried to halt shuttle launch. Roger Boisjoly was an engineer at solid rocket booster manufacturer Morton Thiokol, and he had begun warning as early as 1985 that the joints in the boosters could fail in cold weather, leading to a catastrophic failure of the casting. So basically, like how this works is there's a joint and there's a seal made of rubber that connects the joints, and if it was too cold, that seal was not properly able to seal that joint. And so with that information, engineers recommended to management that they should not launch under 53 degrees. And the weather before the night preceding the launch was below freezing, so obviously below 53 degrees. And according to the Online Ethics Center, Boisjoly stated to management, "It is my honest and very real fear that if we do not take immediate action to dedicate a team to solve the problem, with the field joint having the #1 priority, then we stand in jeopardy of losing a flight along with all the launch pad facilities." However, management neglected to address these issues, which brings me to my next point, that there was abuse of power in management. In the same article in LA Times, engineer tried to halt shuttle launch. Their pleas and technical theories were rejected by senior managers at the company and NASA, who told them they had failed to prove their case and that the shuttle would be launched in freezing temperatures the next morning. And usually engineers, when proceeding with something, they would have to prove that something is safe, where in this case it was reversed. They had to prove that something was not safe. And Boisjoly's greatest fear came, according to textbook Introduction to Engineering Ethics, when Jerry Mason told Bob Lund to take off his engineering hat and put on his management hat. And this shows that management wanted to make a decision apart from what their engineers were telling them. And so management continued to wave off the stresses of their engineers just so that they can meet a deadline. And so the value of life was placed below just saving face for the program, basically. They were riddled with scheduling deadlines, and it just setback after setback, and they didn't want to be viewed as a failure. And so my third point, management decisions caused similar problems with Space Shuttle Columbia. About 20 years later, it burned up coming back into the atmosphere, and it was caused by a piece of foam from liftoff, broke and hit a wing, and it allowed heat to enter into the wing so that upon reentry it caused problems. And so on space.com, in an article, Columbia Disaster, What Happened and What NASA Learned, an investigation board determined that a large piece of foam fell off from the shuttle's external tank and fatally breached the spacecraft wing. This problem with foam had been known for years, and NASA had came under intense scrutiny in Congress and in the media for allowing the situation to continue. So not only was this a known issue, but there was also warning signals throughout the mission that NASA just neglected to tell the crew, and it resulted in their deaths. And the Columbia disaster, in an article called Columbia Disaster on History.com, an investigation board issued a report revealing that it would have been possible either for the Columbia crew to repair the damage to the wing or for the crew to be rescued from the shuttle. So all from the management problems. In conclusion, I showed you that the Challenger disaster could have been prevented, that there was an abuse of power in management, the shuttle Columbia suffered from similar management decisions. So NASA may say that they value safety and the lives of their crew above all else, but their actions show different. So NASA management cannot be trusted. Thank you.
All right, well, the topic's identified pretty clearly. You've got a reasonable propositional statement. There's a solid preview of what the supporting structure is going to be. You signpost that for the most part as you go through it. Sometimes the phrasing, I think, is a little bit awkward, and I think there are some jumps in some of the assumptions being made in the supporting points, but there's good background information explaining the context of the decision-making process, and I thought you did a good job citing technical information that is really relatively straightforward and easy to follow. I do wonder, for instance, the degree of controversy on this. I think on the Challenger issue, for instance, this has been largely a settled issue that there was a problem in the decision-making process, and that's discussed. Now, the notion that the problem continued up through the Columbia, I think that's where where you're beginning to suggest that NASA can't be trusted to fix these kinds of problems, but that's the point that gets a lesser amount of development, and there's certainly, like I said, a lot of big assumptions being made in that particular point. I also wonder, since that one was also 13 years ago, I think it was now, I begin to wonder, and since we don't have any manned missions anymore from NASA, I'm wondering why this argument is particularly controversial or compelling. If there's a discussion about reviving the manned program from NASA, and the argument would then be that they have the same managerial systems, they use the same processes that they had before. I think that's the way that argument could develop a little bit more. All right, thank you.